It's your host, Red. I got another video from Site Hacks. Dr. Orion did a really good one of where'd all the good men go and why women are asking this and the consequences of how society raised nice guys. So please like and subscribe down below. I'd really appreciate that. And let's get to that chow. It's chow time.
I'm Dr. Orion Taraban, and this is Psych Hacks, Better Living Through Psychology. And today we'll be doing another sponsored episode. So these formats are a bit different. I'm going to read the email that I received from the sponsor and then sort of riff on the themes contained therein. So let's get right to it. So this one is coming from RP Mentor Tokyo. And his question is a good question. Where have all the good men gone? You hear this as a complaint among women when they're looking for sexual partners, specifically somebody to have children with. I think we've all heard this at one point in our lives. And in providing relevant context, he included this quote from social psychologist Roy Baumeister, who wrote, "For women throughout history and prehistory, the odds of reproducing have been pretty good.
Yeah, damn high.
Later in this talk, we will ponder things like why was it so rare for 100 women to get together and build a ship and sail off to explore unknown regions, whereas men have fairly regularly done such things. But taking chances like that would be stupid from the perspective of a biological organism seeking to reproduce. They might drown or be killed by savages or catch a disease. For women, the optimal thing to do is to go along with the crowd, be nice, play it safe. The odds are good that men will come along and offer sex and you'll be able to have babies. All that matters is choosing the best offer."
Yeah.
We're descended from women who played it safe. So there's a number of themes in here that I've touched on in previous episodes. For example, all that matters is choosing the best offer. That fits very well with my episode, Women Treat Men the Way Men Treat Jobs, which is a way for men to kind of acclimate emotionally to the idea of female hypergamy without taking it personally.
Yeah.
It sounds like this quote, I think what the sponsor is getting at is potentially some of the more virtuous and masculine traits that we associate with men, the daring do, the courage, the adventuresomeness, the boldness,
That adventuresomeness is gone. We don't have the curiosity, I would say, to explore, to do the unknown, to strive for better or strive to do something that someone else didn't do. That's what made a lot of the men before us great, right? They had nothing, so they figured, hey, let's go do something. Maybe I can make something of myself to get women. That's how it was back then.
strength. On some level, they get weeded out of the gene pool because those men are more likely to go off and get themselves killed by having an adventure. Whereas maybe some of the meeker, more feminine men stay at home and they're the ones who actually end up reproducing with the women.
Interesting.
And so over time, a lot of our strongest masculine traits sort of get they get naturally selected out of the gene pool. And I think that there's probably some truth to that. Women have more children than men do throughout history for precisely that reason. It's much more likely for a woman to reproduce than a man, for instance. But the other side of that coin is that if a man goes off on an adventure and he comes back with treasure and loot and fame, he just hit the jackpot. And there's a very good chance that he is going to be a very successful reproducer from an evolutionary standpoint. We might not think of him as very virtuous or kind, but I think it's true that Genghis Khan is the direct descendant of 1 out of 200 men on the planet today. So he was one of history's greatest evolutionary success stories from the standpoint of actually reproducing his genetic material. And so that's kind of why I think Baumeister's perspective sort of gets balanced, is that, yeah, a lot of this gets weeded out, but if you actually are the adventuresome guy and you come back, you can make a huge impact on the female population, and your genes can redound throughout history.
Yeah, I mean, now, prior to what, history, now it's we have to work, build our income, build a status. You don't have to go anywhere to do anything too dangerous nowadays, but it's still a very similar setting for society that men still have to achieve something to come back with those riches. Where the men that don't achieve anything nowadays, yeah, they're around, but because the danger isn't there, just like it was back in those days, where these men might not come back. So those men might not reproduce. But now it's even the men that try and fail, they still can reproduce because they're still in front of women. And the women see them constantly trying and achieving things and failing. Right? But we're achieving and failing back then meant death. So you were never coming back. Now achieving and failing doesn't mean death. And you're still able to reproduce. So the people that are the weaker, meeker men that are around are even getting less now because the more daring men are still around.
So it might end up being like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, though, of course, there are fewer big winners if you're a man,
It's
which means
true.
that there's probably less genetic variability with respect to this kind of thing. So it's an interesting point. For me, the question of where all the good men have gone has less to do with genes and has less to do with natural selection or evolutionary pressures. And it has much, much more to do with culture. It has much,
Correct.
much more to do with learning. And I think it's fairly fair to say that a lot of what we consider to be traditional, healthy masculinity is under attack in the West. I don't think that will come as much of a surprise to many of the people listening to this channel. And it's important to understand that a culture can go extinct in 3 generations: grandparent to parent, parent to son.
Damn, we're in that now. I think what some grandparents lived that sexual liberation life the when everything changed. And they've had kids and then they've had grandkids. So we're in that generation now that he's speaking of. Oh, that's not good.
Or child. If that culture is not transmitted across those 3 generations,
That's for sure
the
has
4th
not
one,
been.
it's gone. It's almost irreplaceable at that point. So what we have to understand is that it's not that so much that good men have gone, like they've left, as it is that fewer good men are being created with each subsequent generation, because masculinity is under attack from a great deal of social and institutional pressures in the West in particular. So I think that, and this is especially important for the women out there to listen to and to pay attention to, because the same woman who might be complaining about boys' rough and tumble play, or potentially the patriarchy, they might also be wondering where all the good men have gone. And the way that women raise their children will end up being the fathers and husbands of the next generation.
Mm.
And on some level, it behooves women to raise boys in a way not so that they're obedient and compliant children, but so that they can grow up to be the men that they themselves would desire in a husband and a father. That's sort of a mother's greatest success in raising boys, is not to make nice boys, but to raise good men. And this requires the adult mothers to examine some of their beliefs about men and women and power and masculinity and femininity. And these can be very fraught ideas and concepts in today's day and age. They don't have to be, but they are. So it's really important to be very cautious and calm and sober minded as we examine these concepts, because when they're not when they're allowed to operate behind the scenes, they can exert an enormous unconscious impact on the things that we do, don't do, what we say and don't say, and who we allow ourselves to be and who we choose to become. So that's kind of what I have for you today, RP Mentor Tokyo. I hope that suffices. It's definitely more to talk about on this subject, and I hope we can do so in future episodes. So thank you, sir.
That was good, Chow. Having a professional analyze some of these things and speak upon some of these things really shed light and just opens things up in at least my mind. I hope it helps with everybody else too, especially the women that saw this. I think as us men, I see this as, damn, the person we pick to raise our kids is very, very important, right? If they don't raise our kids a certain way to where we feel that our kids are going to be masculine enough, it's going to be a problem. I have a story. My cousin is married to a foreign white woman, and he was raised with a single mother. Because all of my aunts are strong, independent women, but they're not strong, independent, I don't need no man. They're strong, independent, I know what I need to do for the family. So when he grew up with a single mother. So he didn't have as many masculine men around him. My dad would be one, and a few others. He knew what he was lacking. So when he grew up and when he had kids, he has a son now, he straight up told his wife, do not do anything sissy or anything with my son. He straight up told that to her. And when I'm not around, he's not allowed to do some of these things. And I agree with him. Like, you shouldn't be influencing your child certain ways when he's that young. Just let them do what they need to do. Don't put dresses on them and stuff. If they ask, that's different. But most boys aren't gonna ask, right? So please like and subscribe down below. I'd really appreciate it. And I'll catch you guys next time. It's chow time.